We have some major rule changes in the sport of MMA. The grounded opponent rule has been changed. And finally, the 12-6 elbow rule has been vanquished. It is now legal to do the 12-6 elbow. Manel Kape and Muhammad Mokaev were removed from the main card and moved to the prelims and early prelims of UFC 304. And Belal Muhammad's trash talk. Has it crossed the line? Does UFC have a problem with Belal becoming champion? And of course, this controversial UFC 304 start time. We're going to get into it, but first, I'm joined by Adam Fishkin. Adam, how are you, man? Welcome to the Fight SZN Podcast.
I'm doing good, brother. I'm doing good. I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be a good card. I'm excited for the rule change as well. I don't know if the 12-6 elbow rule, like it's a pretty crazy like strike, you know? So it might see some knockouts from it. I'm actually more excited about the grounded opponent rule personally. We'll get into that in a second, but I'm doing well. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for it, but we'll get into it. We can debate it a little bit if you want here.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So the 12-6 elbow strike is officially legal now. So this is the famous strike that John Jones cost his undefeated record. He lost to Matt Hamill due to disqualification back in 2009 because he was throwing 12-6 elbow strikes. And so, which means he can now appeal this rule because it's been changed. What's interesting about it is that, MMA fighters have been calling for this for a long time, but they didn't just change the 12-6 elbow rule. They also addressed the grounded opponent rule, which to me is the most interesting aspect of this. So this is the document here. It's from the Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports Mixed Martial Arts Committee. I'm going to pull up the photo on my computer just because I'm having a little trouble reading it here. But what it says, can we zoom in on it? Are we able to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway, so here's what it says. It says, so basically there is a whole section in their rule book that the use of the linear straight up and down elbow strike is prohibited. Any variation of the straight up and down elbow strike makes the strike legal. Any variation of it. They have completely crossed this part out in the rule book. So now officially they have just basically eliminated the rule. They didn't even address it. They just eliminated it basically, so that now it's legal. But they went to the definition of a grounded opponent, and what they removed was there's a section of it that says any part of the body, other side of the feet, other sole of the feet touching the fighting area floor. To be grounded, the palm of one hand, aka a flat palm, must be down, and or any other part of the body must be touching the fighting area or floor. They have removed that part. They've crossed it out, and they've replaced it with a fighter shall be considered grounded and may not be legally kneed or kicked to the head when any part of their body other than their hands or feet is in contact with the canvas or ground. Basically, the interpretation of this rule is that you need to have at least one knee touching the ground now. This is sort of how Aljamain Sterling has implemented a lot of his ground defenses, by touching the floor so that you can't kick him in the head while he's sort of crawling towards you. And this also happened in the Arnold Allen Movsar Evloev fight, where Movsar was pushing his hand towards the ground and Allen hit him with a knee to the head, which really rattled him. The ref ended up stopping the fight for a period of time because it was considered an illegal knee strike. Even though that was technically a legal one, it just looked illegal at the time. It was very close, like Evloev's hand was sort of lifting up off the mat. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think that they made the right call by changing these rules?
Yeah, most definitely. I think they made the right call. I mean, the 12-6 elbow rule, I think the reason it wasn't in there in the beginning was because it was considered a dangerous strike. And I understand why. The amount of, your elbow is your strongest bone in your body. The amount of force you kind of have coming down like that, it's a lot. So interesting to see. I like John Jones appealing the decision. A, it's 15 years ago. It's not going to get changed, I think. B, what Jones did in that fight was still illegal at the time. And, it's kind of, this is what's it called? A super out of proportion example, but it's kind of like people who have been locked up for marijuana, right? And now marijuana is legal in a lot of places, but at the time it was illegal. So a lot of people are still in jail for stuff like that, right? So you still broke the rules. Not going to get political here, just kind of an analogy, know, per se. But with the grounded opponent rule, I actually think that's super interesting because you see it in fights all the time where they'll just kind of like they'll be up in there and then all of a sudden they'll bend down, they'll touch the ground, they'll keep touching the ground, you can't do anything about it, you know, and it's just super annoying. You're not grounded, you're just taking advantage of the rules, you know. And it would only be a dangerous strike because you're making it a dangerous strike by putting yourself down that way, right? We're going to see fighters do that less, which means that the opportunity for a head kick there or whatever is just not going to be as prominent. And like you said, Evloev got rocked, and that's just what's going to happen if you put your head down now. You know, when your knees on the ground, you're actually grounded. You can't really, you don't have that same range of motion anymore, right?
Yeah, and to your point about the the marijuana thing, I think that's 100% true. I still think. I think that everything is sort of circumstantial, right?
Of
like
course.
you can look at things a very specific way under the right circumstances. The Evloev thing, you know, you could argue, oh, Arnold Allen got screwed. I do think he got screwed in the moment because I think that they misinterpreted the rule. I don't think he was actually down based on the rule based on the rule at the time. But I don't think Evloev would have been putting his hand on the ground like that if the rule wasn't in place. So it's like you can't really say that like, oh, Allen would have won the fight if that rule wasn't in place. Like, no, because his head wouldn't have been down there most likely, and he wouldn't have been reaching his hand down there if that rule wasn't in the back of his head as a legal thing he could do. Right? He would have known that he wasn't establishing himself, so he wouldn't have even been in that position to begin with. So that's the issue that I have with that argument. You know what I mean? And the same thing with like the 12-6 elbow strikes. Like if you did it when the rules were broken, then you can't really go back and change it. Otherwise, the rules mean nothing. You know, Then it's like, what are we going to do? We're going to retroactively go back and like you used to be able to punch guys in the nuts. You know what I mean? Like you're going to retroactively go back and change those rules, like and change outcomes of fights when those rules were in place. Like, no, you have to live with the way outcomes happened at the time that the rules were in place.
Exactly. And John's a smart guy. Like I don't think he's going to make a big deal out of it. I don't even know if he's going to appeal it.
He actually tweeted about it. I should have brought this up.
Did he? Oh, yeah. Did he say he's going to appeal it?
Let me see. He tweeted to Dana, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on. I'll bring it up. But go ahead. Yeah.
No, like, I don't know. It's circumstantial, right? Like, can the loss be wiped off? Possibly. Like, maybe it's a no. I don't know. Nah.
No, I think that you can
keep the loss.
You can like appeal it if he wants to, right? Like you could say, hey, I was winning the fight. Like you could definitely appeal it, but I just don't think that any sanctioning body would overturn it at this point. I mean, he also has to worry about his Cormier. That fight was a no contest because he tested positive for whatever it was at the time. His picograms. He had the picograms in his system, and you know he has multiple things that he'd have to overturn. I don't see it happening, but this is what he said: undefeated then, undefeated now. Dana White, we got to get that loss out of the history books, and it's a photo of him dropping the 12-6 elbow on Matt Hamill. So.
Yeah.
He
obviously wants to be undefeated, right?
Yeah.
So you can't blame the man. But no, I like the rule changes. I think overall it adds a lot to the fights. You know, potential for more knockouts, TKOs.
Yeah.
And potential for just more exciting fights with people not being grounded all the time.
Yeah, and it just isn't going to it leaves open room. It removes any doubt or gray area that like you can use that sort of strategy to win a fight. You know what I mean? Because you wouldn't do that in any other situation. It just sort of is it feels too easily manipulated. So now you got to get a knee down. It'll make some I agree. It's going to open up some it's going to just remove any doubt that there was any reason to doubt that this grappling heavy fighter who uses that strategy a lot, that they were winning because of that, as opposed to in spite of that. So we are going to move on, but first we have to give you guys a little shout out to our good friends over at DraftKings. So stick around. We'll be right back. We'll be back to the show in just a second, but first I got to tell you guys about an incredible offer we got going on with our partners over at DraftKings. UFC 304 is this weekend. It's an incredible night of fights, an incredible card. And right now, if you're a new DraftKings customer, You can go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5 on any bet on UFC 304, and you get $150 of bonus bets instantly using our promo code INSIDEFIGHTING. The best thing about DraftKings is that you can do same fight parlays, so you can use your bonus bets to have fun with that. Or if sports betting isn't available in your state, it's really not a big deal because you can always download DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and have some fun there. That's my favorite thing to do on DraftKings. So once again, if you want to bet on UFC 304, go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. New customers who bet $5 get $150 of bonus bets instantly using promo code INSIDEFIGHTING. This is the most interesting thing about this weekend's card at UFC 304. We have a massive fight at flyweight. I'm talking like this is a potential title eliminator between Manel Kape and Muhammad Mokaev. These two guys really don't like each other. And they're also both really popular fighters. I mean, Mokaev is huge in the Middle East. He has a huge following. He has like over 1 million followers on Instagram. And Manel Kape is, am I lagging at all?
Nope.
Okay.
You're all good.
Manel Kape is a sort of beloved in some regard amongst UFC fans because he stood up to Israel Adesanya at the press conference in Australia. He's a lot of fun. He's a great character. He's also a very exciting fighter. He just misses weight a lot, so that's like the biggest issue that some people have. Well, the fight was moved from the main card at UFC 304, and it was pushed down to the early prelims. And there's a lot of questions as to why. Manel Kape did an interview at UFC Media Day, and he addressed it basically saying, well, it's probably because people perceive me to be a boring fighter. But there's a lot of fans out there that don't think this is the case because they believe it's because he's on the final fight of his UFC contract and he's in the middle of renegotiating a new deal. He's only 23 years old. He's going to get re-signed. Like he's a big star for flyweight and a potential future champion. But this is a tactic that the UFC has used with fighters before where they will sort of bury their fights when it's a good opportunity to promote yourself. Like, okay, if you're overplaying your hand with the big boss, with the guys that write your paychecks, they'll do some certain things to let you know, hey, you're not as, you don't have as much leverage as you think you do. Now, I've never made these sorts of backroom deals. I'm not sure if you have, but I'm just curious what your take on this is.
I think it's a great move by the UFC. It's business at the end of the day. Although these two fans are fan favorites in different respects, I don't know if they're as beloved on this card specifically for the hometown fans, A, and B, I don't think it affects pay-per-view guys. So sure, they want to put on a great card, still a great card without these guys on the main card. So I think it's cool. But yeah, just Dana showing them who the real boss is, like that's literally all it comes down to. And you got to respect that business is business at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I just more sort of want to get into why I think this is, I agree with you. I don't think that this fight has any sort of bearing on the pay-per-view sales. I think it's a lost opportunity more for them than it is for the UFC, probably because they they have a great little rivalry going on. And so it's kind of a shame that we're not going to be able to see it highlighted anymore. It's going to be like the fourth fight on the card. So they're going to talk about it a little bit on the pay-per-view, but we're not going to get or on the free fight card, but we're not going to get it. It just sucks. This could have been, there could have been so much more to this, but because look at what was going on this week. These guys really don't like each other.
I will say while you pull up that video is that if anything, this actually helps the UFC at the venue. There will be fans who will come early just to see this fight.
Right?
The UK doesn't get many fights per year. It might just, I think it's like 2 per year they typically get. So yeah, it's a good way to fill the stadium early, even though early is like midnight for this card. So
yeah, and it might also help people tune in on the telecast too, where they might tune in a little bit earlier. So anyway, so this was them earlier this week. They got into an altercation at the Fighter Hotel. So that's Mokaev's team and Kape's team getting into some sort of an altercation. And I guess Mokaev might have gotten like slightly cut from this. So this actually goes back to they supposedly got into an altercation at the UFC PI a few weeks back. Manel Kape did an interview with us where he denied this to be the case. He said that nothing happened, that it was all sort of blown out of proportion. But I just thought it was interesting that this is like the one fight on this card where there was actual beef. There was actual juice behind the fight, where there was two guys that really didn't like each other. I think that if they weren't in flyweight, these guys would have pushed this fight more. But because it was flyweight, they could risk it. Like any weight class higher, this fight probably would have been pushed more. So
yeah, I feel you. I feel you.
Anyway,
yes. All right. Speaking of altercations, though, there was another altercation that happened this weekend. It was definitely a smaller one. Belal and Leon.
Yeah.
They met in the elevator. And it's funny. I've been making TikToks, blind ranking UFC fighters that I wouldn't want to be stuck in an elevator with. And yeah, it just fits the vibe.
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight. I didn't even think about that. That's true. This is that situation come to fruition right here.
Yeah.
So Belal was already in the elevator, and Leon walks into the elevator with his crew. But it's funny because Belal was doing interviews talking about this altercation, and he was saying how Leon seemed scared, he seemed nervous, that that he was like super quiet, that he didn't say anything. And then UFC Embedded comes out showing this purported altercation in an elevator. It did not seem to me like Leon was all that scared, if I'm being honest. But I don't know. Hold on.
Just Leon's personality, dude. It's so funny. He's like a quiet guy, and then he'll just giggle, and toss some little one-liners. And I love it about him. I think it's great. Don't think he's scared. Belal looked more scared, if anything. But I'll give it to Belal. He did have a decent comeback there. So
yeah,
we'll give it to him.
Belal has really been trying to sell this fight. Like, we got to give him some credit. He's really been trying to sell the fight, but it's also opened up some debate and questions about him as potential champion, because he's like really trying to make it seem like he genuinely hates Leon Edwards because of the eye poke, because his win streak was halted because of the eye poke, that Leon pokes him in the eye, then goes on to become champion, right? Gets the Nate Diaz fight, beats Nate Diaz, then beats Kamaru Usman, becomes champion, where they were both, him and Belal were on similar trajectories. So Belal resents the fact that Leon got the eye poke and then still got a title shot one fight later. So I can understand where that is, but he's been talking a lot about, how he is going to torture him. We mentioned on Insider Betting that he put out a comment. He did like fan fiction on an Instagram comment section where he said he was going to 50-42 him, and that he was going to torture him and win by decision. Which,
what a loser, dude. He's not torturing anyone. If anything, he's sitting on top of Leon. Like that. The only way Belal wins, in my opinion, is taking Leon down a few times and just ground control. And that's not torture. It's torture being I'm not even gonna go into it, but I love it.
Do you think this does UFC have a problem on their hands with Belal as potentially as champion because of the marketability aspect? Like, John Anik did an interview with us where he said that if Leon, where he basically admitted he's really good friends with Belal. He said if Belal wins, they're probably going to rush Belal to a title defense so that they can get the next fight as soon as possible, because they probably don't want him to be champion very long. I'm curious if you agree with that.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on Insider Betting as well, actually. I think that we're it's not recency bias, but you're kind of like your opinion is made up of your perceptions, right? And how you see the world. And how we see the world on this side of the world is we don't like Belal, but we forget that the Middle East is heavily populated and they all really like Belal for the most part. So I think the fans that the UFC are losing, they're gaining in other parts of the world. I think if you have a fight with Belal in like Abu Dhabi or whatever, people will show up, or Riyadh even. But yeah, it like, for the popularity of the sport, like the money is driven into the UFC through North America. So obviously for the popularity of like where they make most of their money, it's not a good thing for the UFC, but they could still take advantage of it. And maybe they do rush it, but if they rush it, they'll probably rush it to the Middle East.
Yeah, but even then, it's like they've had stars like Habib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev, but both of those guys were really good on the microphone. They're very charismatic people. They're very funny. Belal is an American who is a Muslim, so that is an aspect of it that's like they're sort of caught in between two different. He's an American Muslim who's a little cringy on the microphone. He's not as charismatic as Khabib, and maybe not as sellable as those guys are, simply because they were born in Russia. They're born on that side of the world, a little bit more close to home.
I think putting Belal Muhammad in the same conversation as Habib and Islam is foul. I think that aside from them being more energetic, charismatic, entertaining on the microphone, you can just like those two guys because they're great fighters. Yeah. And they piece guys up. And Belal just doesn't have that about him.
They were also funny. Like Islam's funny. Khabib was funny. Belal's a little just like, he just doesn't have he's not witty. You know what I mean? He just doesn't have it.
He's not witty. He's just not entertaining. He's not entertaining outside of the octagon. He's not entertaining inside the octagon, where those other guys, they're entertaining on all aspects,
I don't want to hate on him too much. I want to give him a little bit of love before we move to the next segment here, because he did win the face-off today. He did win the press conference.
He did. I got to give it to him.
A little bit of love here. So hold on. So during their face-off, Leon tries to make Belal flinch because Belal does the headshot dead thing to Leon. And then so Leon tries to make him flinch, and look at what happens. Didn't flinch. Big fail by Leon there. As much as it wasn't like a great performance on the microphone, as much as it's been a little bit of a cringy buildup, I thought that was Belal's best moment. That's like when Matt Barnes tries to like throw the basketball in Kobe Bryant's face and he doesn't flinch. Yeah. That was Belal's like gangster moment. So somebody's gonna throw a TikTok edit up of that moment. I guarantee you, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Yeah. So good for you, Belal. You didn't flinch. Dana flinched though. Did you see Dana?
I saw it. Yeah. Dana's like, no way, not here, not right now.
I love that. All right.
But yeah, no, it's good shade. Got to give it to Belal. And we can talk all the smack we want, but at the end of the day, like he's on is it a 10 or 13 fight win streak? I don't know why I have both of those.
Yeah, I think it's like at least 11. I think maybe 10. Yeah. Belal win streak. I'll tell you right now.
So he deserves a title fight.
He absolutely deserves to be here. Of course, he deserves to be here. I'll get that right now. It's going to bother me if I don't. My internet's running so slow. Anyways, whatever.
It is. All right. It is. He's on a fight. He's on a win streak.
All right. So I want to end on a little funny topic here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's a 9 fight win streak. All right.
Well,
I want to end.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's 9. Yeah. I want to end on a little funny moment here. I'm not lagging on your end here?
No.
Okay. So we've got UFC 304 this weekend. The main card start time is supposed to be around 3 a.m. So the fight's going to be ending locally in Manchester. The main card, like Leon and Belal will probably take the stage around like 5:30 in the morning. The card will end around 6 a.m. So I'm just curious, which fighter on the main card do you think will have the hardest time staying awake for their fight Saturday night?
I think there's 2 good answers here. One, I think King Green. I just don't think he cares. I think it's just like he'll be like, I'll be fine, and he might struggle with it a bit more than he thinks. But the surprising answer, although it should be too surprising, Tom Aspinall. He made a joke how Leon Edwards hired like a sleep expert, and Leon worked hard on fixing his sleep. And Tom's like, nah, that's expensive. I'll just take Leon's advice. Right. And I think that's a terrible mentality as an interim champ. He'll still win. Like I predicted that on insider betting. But I just think that might be a little bit of a struggle for those 2 guys.
I think you're right. The correct answer is King Bobby Green or King Green. because I also think that like if there's one person out of that entire group that's not going to get a sleep expert, that's not going to be adjusting their sleep patterns, it'd probably be Bobby Green, King Green. I know that he likes to partake a little bit in the marijuana. He's going to be smoking a little bit. Although I don't think you can smoke in the UK. Can you? Is it legal? I don't know. I don't know the rule.
It is illegal, but very accessible as someone who lived in the UK for 4 months.
Right.
they like in Canada, where I'm from, it's 100% legal. And you would think the same thing when you're in the UK, just based on how much they smoke there too.
Right. Well, I will say that the only other person besides King Green, luckily for King Green, the only other person that I would see lacking the discipline to commit to a sleep schedule would probably be his opponent in the ring, Paddy Pimblett. I could definitely, I remember a video of Paddy Pimblett getting mad at construction workers next to his home because they were working at like 8 a.m. and he was getting mad about it. He was like yelling at these construction workers. That's 8 a.m, dude. That's like when they work, you know? Yeah. So it's like, if you're gonna get mad about that, I could see that maybe Paddy might struggle with it as well, because he also does balloon up a little bit after his fights. He lacks discipline with his diet. So if that's the case, I could see him maybe lacking some discipline.
The one thing I will say in Paddy's defense is that he balloons in the off season, but you give him 6 months and the guy is shredded, and that takes a ton of discipline.
He looks amazing.
Exactly. And if he worked on within those 6 months, when you're disciplined in one aspect, I find very easy to be disciplined in all aspects, right? But when you start lacking in one, then the rest kind of follows. So I think that him being so hardcore for those 6 months, it's more than enough time to fix his sleep schedule. And I think he probably did work on it a little bit, but you're right. Just like based on like his off season, it's very good chance he did.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Maybe Curtis Blades could potentially be another one, just being the American fighting later, but I don't know. I feel like he would take it seriously. So
I wonder how much the Americans are going to struggle, because for them, their body doesn't need to adjust, right? But I think I find this is like when it's dark outside, that's when like your body just kind of starts shutting down, even though it might not. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how the Americans. I think the Brits, which is why I brought up Tom Aspinall, could struggle more with it.
Yeah, because they are the ones who it changes their sleep patterns the most out of anybody. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. No, I agree with that. But I still think that if you're committing to, I know Leon's like super committed to, like Leon's been working like 2 months out on adjusting his sleep patterns. So
exactly.
I don't think it'll be a problem for Leon at all. But
no.
Anyways, well, that was fun. I was a little bit choppy there. I hope that there wasn't too many issues, because I was having some internet problems. But if you didn't see it, then they won't see it. But that was a fun one, Adam.
Appreciate it, brother. It's always a good time.
UFC 304 is this weekend. I couldn't be more excited. Make sure you check out Insider Betting. We break down the main card and some of the prelim fights, give you all the betting odds, all of our advice, and how to bet this incredible weekend of fights. And remember the name, Fight SZN Podcast. Check us out. Subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Hell yeah.